No, judges, sorry. Yes. No, bad prep on my part. Okay, I'm going to call these proceedings to order. For those that don't know, I'm Judge McCabery. I've been the Division 4 District Court Judge here since 2014. Thank you all for coming. I know there are some former 7th Judicial District judges present. There may be other judges present that I haven't recognized. I would ask if you are a former judge, district court, appellate court, or otherwise, please present yourself to the jury box. We'd like to be able to recognize your presence here today. Oh, my goodness. Okay, great. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here on this occasion. Being joined by these judges is an honor. We also have Chief Justice of the Kansas Supreme Court joining us today, and I'm just glad to be here. The invitation I received to this event said retirement party honoring Judge Sally Pokorny. And Webster provided me some insight on how I should proceed in those circumstances. It said that to honor is to recognize, to give credit, or to decorate. And you all being here today, this room being so full and so full of good energy, including, I think there may be, looks like we weren't able to maybe manage or need the overflow room, but in any event, this turnout is a wonderful decoration of the honor that we hope to bestow and recognize today, and is a proper credit to the respect that Sally Pokorny's career and service has earned in this community. Goes far beyond the 4 walls of the courthouse where she has served as a district court judge since 2009. As a part of the more formal efforts we're going to make to honor Judge Pokorny today, we will hear from people who will share their stories and experiences of knowing and working with Sally Pokorny over the years. Judge Sally Pokorny, I remember the first time I heard that she was going to be a district judge in Douglas County, Kansas. I had a head start on knowing what that meant because the first time I came to know Sally Pokorny was more than about a dozen years ahead of her being installed here in Douglas County. We both practiced down in Montgomery County, Southeast Kansas. And I was a new lawyer, or when I was a new lawyer, and heard that name, and I can't remember even what the occasion was. I asked one of the lawyers in the firm about Sally, and they said, "You won't have any issues dealing with her. She's great to work with." Now, partly because lawyers enjoy being colorful, some of the other descriptions I heard from other attorneys were a little bit more colorful than just that. But to be fair, when you get to know Sally Pokorny, your description is going to be colorful. She is not a person you describe in black and white terms. I should add, every description that I heard in some form or fashion included the idea that she was smart and a straight shooter. Now, Sally has been around, and not just around a while, but around Kansas. And even from the first time I started practicing and got to know her, and I would go to other places in the state, somehow, whether that was Topeka or Wichita or other courts, somehow, some way, more often than not, the name Sally Pokorny would, if they knew that's where I was from, they would ask me if I knew Sally, or somehow that name would come up. She's just known because she's been so involved and done so much. So when she received her appointment in Douglas County, I was suddenly the one answering questions and reassuring people this will be a very good thing, and it has proved to be a very good thing. I will leave it to the others who are speaking today to make that point, but I'm sure many of you already know it and can tell your own stories. And it is something of a tribute in itself that as you hear these stories today, you are going to hear what I heard almost 30 years ago. She's smart and she's a straight shooter. She cares about people. And if there is a secret sauce to being a good district court judge, That is it. And if there's anybody I would expect to figure out that recipe, it is my friend and colleague, Sally Pokorny. Chief Judge Simpson.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It really is an honor to be a part of this ceremony, to get to speak, because I have a ton of respect and admiration for Judge Pokorny. She's played a very important role in my professional life, and so I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak for a few minutes. When I was an attorney, I appeared all the time in front of Judge Pokorny, and I very much respected her. I think I did 9 jury trials in front of her. She got tired of seeing me, which was fair. But it was a great experience to appear in front of her. And then I've had the opportunity to serve on the bench with her for 7 years almost now. And my respect and affection for her has grown from there. And as you all will not be surprised to know, she's an outstanding colleague and friend. But I've been asked to say a few words about Judge Pokorny's work with Behavioral Health Court, and to talk a little bit, just briefly, about the history of Behavioral Health Court here in Douglas County. And so to begin with, as best I can tell, the Douglas County Behavioral Health Court is the first district court behavioral health court in Kansas. And it's now just one of 3 district court behavioral health courts in the state. And so our behavioral health court is a treatment court that accepts defendants who have a severe mental illness that contributed to their criminal behavior, and it provides them with intensive mental health treatment, with substance use treatment, with community supports, with accountability, and much more. And when a participant graduates from that program, their charges are dismissed and their arrest is expunged, and they move on without that case hanging over their head. The discussions about starting a behavioral health court in Douglas County started, I believe, in 2014 with Judge Pokorny and then District Attorney Charles Branson and myself. And we put together a team of people to plan and to move forward that included Sharon Zaire from Burt Nash and Margaret Severson and Jason Matikowski from KU and Michelle Roberts and Deb Wright. And attorney Hadam Shaheen was involved, as was a peer, Buddy Jeans. And so after much planning, the Behavioral Health Court began in June of 2016 with 1 participant. And at that point, the team was made up of Officers Shannon Brugge and Annie Curtis and Shannon Young and Ed Lovedell from DECA and Juanita Carlson and Kyle Brittingham and others. So that's how it began. In 2017, the Douglas County Commission approved ongoing funding for the Behavioral Health Court. And since then, this court that Judge Pokorny started has grown and thrived. And over the years, there have been many dedicated professionals on the Behavioral Health Court team, including the outstanding current BHC team. But as you might guess, the heart and soul of Behavioral Health Court is Judge Pokorny. And she always has been. To give you a little bit of background about the way Behavioral Health Court works is Judge Pokorny and the team meet before Behavioral Health Court, and they talk about each of the participants and how they're doing. What's going well? What is this person struggling with? What supports do they need? Is there a sanction that they need? And then when it's time for the docket, all of the participants gather in the courtroom. And then Judge Pokorny comes out. And she meets with each participant one-on-one. She talks to each of them and has an individual conversation. She sits at a counsel table just across from them. And that really is where the magic happens in Behavioral Health Court, because her genuine compassion and care and respect for the participants is really extraordinary. And the participants know it, they feel it, they see it, and it's a simple thing, but it really makes all the difference. And that's what Judge Pokorny does. And for many of the participants, their relationship with Judge Pokorny is a big reason why they're able to succeed this time when they haven't been able to before. So I've been thinking about how to describe for you Judge Pokorny's role in Behavioral Health Court. And I've tried in my own words, but I think the best way is for you to hear what some of the participants have to say about Judge Pokorny. So I asked for some help from Sharon Zaire, and she talked to some graduates and some participants in the program. And here's what they said about Judge Pokorny. One said, Judge Pokorny is genuine, and she was really thoughtful and really cared where our lives were going. Another said, having a judge who truly cared about me was a life-changing experience. Another graduate said, Judge Pokorny was tough, yet pragmatic and compassionate. I will be forever grateful to her for the guidance and support I received, which helped me get back to where I needed to be. I don't think I would have made it if not for the behavioral health court program. And then one more. This one is my favorite. BHC sent me on the path to my eventual freedom. The universe put me in BHC, and I'm more well put together than I ever have been in my life. Judge Pokorny is awesome. I love a judge who wears leather. So after 98 graduations, I believe, and a decade of Thursday afternoons in behavioral health court, Judge Pokorny is moving on to a well-earned retirement. So thank you, Judge Pokorny, for your commitment to the behavioral health court. Your work changed the way that people with mental illness are treated in this community. And behavioral health court is a part of your legacy. And because of you, it will continue on as a force for justice and healing in this county. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. One of the special bonds you build as a district court judge is with your immediate staff, your court reporter among them. We're going to hear from Mary Kay Howe, who's a court reporter for Judge Pokorny up until last year. Her current court reporter, Ellen Grant, is present and was going to speak, but told me she couldn't cry in front of so many people. So we excused her performance, but here's Mary Kay.
That's why I brought the Kleenexes over, because I probably would. Sally. Okay, so I was Judge Pokorny's court reporter from the time she started until I retired last June. And the way it works is she had to take me because I was already here, so sorry. But so I was with her her entire judicial career, and I couldn't have asked for anybody better. But before she came, I didn't know her. I had never worked for a woman before, never met her. I heard she was quite the go-getter and other adjectives. They were all good. They were all good, but kind of scared me. So I was really nervous about her coming, but it didn't take very long at all for that nervousness to go away, and for us to become what I call lifelong friends. She was my boss, but she was also just a great friend. And we spent a lot of time just talking to each other about life, cases. And, sometimes we'd come back in the office and go, I didn't think I'd ever hear that in my lifetime. And then we do. Anyway, so we started with back in 2009 when she took the bench, and we had Becky Stevens over here, and then Sally, and then Heidi Connolly, who was the bailiff, who unfortunately passed away this last year unexpectedly. And if she was here, she would be front and center because she loved Judge Pokorny. So anyway, we were a great team for many, many years. And then along came Ellen, who was her administrative assistant, and I talked her into becoming a court reporter. So she became her court reporter when I left. And then we had Aaron, who isn't here right now, but he was great, but he got lured back into his old job with more money. And then Jesse is here now, and who was another great addition to Division 2. But we all had one thing in common. Every one of us loved Judge Pokorny. because she's just such a special person. And one thing that happened in the first year, I think, when we were there is we were back in the office and she said, "Why do you always call me judge?" And I said, "Because you're the judge." And I said, "I always call judges judge." And she said, "Just call me Sally." And that's just who she is. She's just this welcoming, loving person. And so, I just loved her in the office. I keep saying that over and over because I loved her in the office. But it was fun. We had a lot of laughs. We had some tears. We had discussions about cases. Not that she took my advice or anything, but I would give her my opinion. Uh, but she was also a very, very good judge. And I loved listening to her decisions. And even in my retirement now, I read the paper and the comments that she has said in court, and it just makes me smile because it's like, oh, I knew she was going to do that. But I haven't run across a single person that hasn't said something very kind or profound about her. So, sorry. Uh, but I am going to call her a judge of the people because that's who she is. She makes everyone feel comfortable in whatever setting they're at. And I don't care if you're a defendant, downtrodden, or if you are a Supreme Court justice. But she just anywhere in between, she just makes you feel like she loves you, and she does. She really does. Uh, but many times we would have defendants. She's sending them off to prison, and she has gotten down on their level, told them how their life is going to be better for this because they're going to get away from, the crowd they're in, the drugs they're on, whatever their situation is. And by the time she is done talking to them on their level, they are thanking her for sending them to prison. And but she's never made anyone feel like they're anything less than her. But she always still had this very commanding judicial presence about her. And but I want to talk about some of the funny things that happened over the years. And I'm sure there was a lot more that I just can't remember now. But anyway, in our first year there, to show her appreciation of me, she knocked over an entire set of files over on top of me. But and because she said this at my retirement, I feel like I can repeat it again. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have. But in her first year, she would have a runaway witness on the stand, and she couldn't remember their name and didn't know how to stop them. And so she would do this. Da, 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 da. So after doing this quite a few times, I said in the office, it's really hard for a court reporter to take down. And it would really be better if maybe you could call them by their name or something. And she goes, "Well, that's it. I don't know their name." And I said, I always ask them to spell their name when they come up to the witness stand. And so from then on, she had that. So she had a lot of crazy times, but she always kept her composure. We had one person who he called himself the king, and she was his queen, and they were married. And but it probably wasn't going to work out because they were the wrong religion. So someone else that called her the silver fox, which she is. She received a letter from a defendant that said he really liked her blonde hair and her lipstick, and that she was very young and sexy looking, and to hit him up when he got his mental health intact. That they would make a good power couple. So one of the harder cases she had was what is referred to as the Mass Street murders, where there was 3 defendants, 3 victims, late 2 o'clock in the morning that happened, and it went on for a very long time. And I think the trial itself was like 3 weeks itself. One of the victims, unfortunately, was a young girl who came over, whose mother told her, "You'd be safer in Lawrence than in Kansas City." And then she ended up being the victim, just unsuspecting victim. So, but anyway, she just handled that case with distinction. And it was just a very difficult case. Um, we also had a recent case in the last year or two. I lose track of time, but there was what I would call almost a riot in our courtroom. And I had never seen anything like it in my entire career, and I don't think she had either. And it ended up with a lockdown of the courthouse. And for the rest of that day and other hearings thereon for a long time, we would have officers lined up down the hall, both sides, clear down to when the south door was open. There's probably 100 officers there all the time. And I mean, it was just a kind of a wild case that she handled. But once again, she handled it with great judicial demeanor, and it all worked out in the end. So there were another case, there were pleadings filed in a real noteworthy case where it was quoted in the pleadings with Judge Pokorny that she was a stupid bleep bleep. And I won't say the words, but anyway, and then they go on to say that they'll talk through their teeth and say whatever's necessary to get out of jail. Then they go on to call her another bleep. All of this was on a recorded phone call from the jail, which of course they're told everything's being recorded and that can be used against them. And she was also called corrupt as part of this, which is the most laughable matter in the whole thing. But that was just another difficult trial that she had. And then in the middle of her tenure, we had COVID. And she adapted. We all adapted. But with that, there was always some interesting things that happened to the point that she would have to tell people at the beginning of every video hearing that they had to be fully dressed for court, because we had several in a state of questionable undress and smoking, some that obviously just got out of bed in their nighttime attire or lack thereof. But they were told every time they couldn't smoke, they couldn't be driving, they had to be dressed, they couldn't wear a hat, that they were in court. It was definitely a crazy time, but we managed to get through it. So, and then we had another, not too long ago, rape trial where we had a witness on the witness stand and was asked like an innocuous question by the prosecutor. And this witness slams her head down on the witness stand. I jumped out of my chair because it was so, and she just laid there. And it was just real quiet in the courtroom for a while because nobody knew what to do. And finally, the judge asked security to come up, and Lori Powell, I don't know if she's here, but she came up and she goes, "Are you okay?" Yeah. But she just lays there. So it's just, just another one of those funny things that happened over the years. We had another rape trial that went from 2019 to 2025. And some of that was because of COVID, but it was a defendant that would go back and forth between, I want a new attorney, I want to fire my attorney, I want to represent myself, I want another new attorney, I want to represent myself. And it went back and forth. As I said, it was 6 years, and it finally ended in 2025. But there were many, many pleadings and motions filed that she'd have to deal with. But she handled him firmly, but once again, in a very respectful manner. And I'm sure there were many of us, including myself, that just wanted to scream at him and some of the things he said and did, but she always kept her composure. And sometimes I don't know how she did that, but she did. There was another time that we had a witness who said they saw a cat in front of the podium. And Carol Klein was the attorney, and she said, "So you see a cat right here?" She goes, "Yes, it's a gray cat." So, anyway, just another one of those funny things that happen. Another defendant, when asked to rise, he refused and calls her a name, and that she was as rude as Blape and other many derogatory names. He was led out of the courtroom yelling and screaming, saying all kinds of horrible things to her, about her. So you can see there was always a lot of drama, but she always handled it with incredible judicial temperament. I couldn't go, and thank you, Judge Simpson, for talking about behavioral health court. But one thing about behavioral health court I have to talk about is, well, first, for those that don't know, she wore 90% of the time designer tennis shoes, and they always matched her clothes, whatever they were. They were so cute. I mean, they're polka dotted, they're flowers, there's floral, there's plain, yeah, she has some on today to match her outfit. And um, most people, a lot of people didn't know it because she'd be behind the bench or behind the counter in the office and stuff like that, but they were always really cute. And the people that knew would always want to come and see her tennis shoes. But we had, because in behavioral health court, she would sit in her plain clothes across the table from them. We had one of the participants that he picked up on her shoes, and he would come in every time and say, "Judge Pokorny, I have to see what shoes you have on today." So, but that was just part of her. But as part of behavioral health court, I would be remiss without talking about, well, you already talked, she was one of the founding members, but at the end, at the graduations, she would have those participants and their family members coming up and hugging her, praising her, thanking her, you know, thanking for saving their life, thanking for saving their child's life. I mean, it was just a very emotional time. Many times I just had to keep my Kleenexes there, just watching this all happen in front of me. So it was just a cool thing to see what all she did. And just to talk a little bit about some of her accomplishments, she received many awards. In 2011, she was on the panel of the National Business Institute Judicial Forum on what civil court judges want you to know. In 2015, she was honored with the prestigious Jenny Mitchell Kellogg Award and was called a trailblazer. In 2015, also, she was a spotlight on the front page of the Washburn Lawyer Alumni Magazine. In 2016, she was inducted into an Alumni Women's Honor Society. In 2022, she was pictured in the Lawyer's Business Magazine and recognized as being a woman of impact. She helped found the Kansas Women's Attorney Association. These are going to be really big shoes to fill, because she's going to be missed by so many people and remembered so fondly. She just was just a judge of the people, and just hard to find people like that. Judge Pokorny, I wish you the very best in your retirement.
Thank you, Mary Kay. As she was telling all those stories, I spend too much time on YouTube sometimes watching bad performances by judges. And more than once I've thought to myself, if Judge Pokorny was handling that situation, it wouldn't be going sideways the way it is right now. So thank you for some of those stories. In addition to court reporters and staff that judges build relationships with, we count on people outside the courtroom to encourage us, support us, be there for us. And we have a dear friend of Judge Pokorny here today to make some remarks. Hattie McCormick.
Good afternoon, everybody. Oh my gosh, this is difficult after Mary Kay. And Mary Kay, we have similar stories, so I'm going to try to add it as well. Today, and I have to read this because like Mary Kay, I will cry. I've already cried since I've written this, so here we go. Today, we gather to honor a remarkable career, one defined not just by years of service, but by the lives touched, the justice pursued, and the integrity upheld every single day. My name is Patty McCormick, one of the non-legal professionals in the room. Sally Pokorny and I have been dear friends for over 30 years, and I have been at her side for those years, watching her brilliantly navigate the transitions in her life, and even spending many hours in the courtroom as an observer. So I've become an expert, I think. For nearly 50 years, Judge Sally Davis Pokorny has demonstrated exemplary service to the legal profession. A magna cum laude graduate of Washburn University and Dean's Honor in the Washburn School of Law, she became the first woman in Kansas elected as county attorney, which was in Montgomery County. Often seen appearing in court with her firstborn, or sometimes her second, I think, both in a Snuggie strapped to her chest. Judge Pokorny was also the first judge in the state of Kansas to helm the first behavioral health court, as you have heard. Over her extensive career, she spent 32 years practicing law in various roles, including prosecutor, county attorney, defense attorney, and has served as a district court judge for an additional 17 years. That kind of breadth is rare. That kind of dedication is extraordinary. A quote from Atticus Finch, To Kill a Mockingbird, a film that has significantly influenced Sally's life, is particularly relevant today. Quote, "You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb inside of his skin and walk around in it." And I walked in this courtroom and I looked up at this box up here and I thought, I remember that scene in To Kill a Mockingbird. That sentiment captures something essential about Judge Sally, because to serve as a prosecutor is to seek justice for the community. To serve as a defense attorney is to stand firmly for the rights of the individual. And to serve as a judge is to carry both of those perspectives fairly, thoughtfully, and with unwavering balance. Not everyone is called or able to see the law from all of these sides, but Judge Sally didn't just see those perspectives, she lived them. She walked in those shoes, and that has made all the difference. It's what gave her the wisdom to listen carefully, the composure to patiently give time to each person that came before her, often longer than anyone else had ever taken the time to hear their requests and their stories. It's given her patience to weigh each case fully and the humility to remember that behind every file is a human being. In a life in the 7th District Court, Judge Sally found herself shaping not just the law, but the very atmosphere of her courtroom. One of the duties of the judges was officiating courthouse weddings, a tradition she embraced with heartfelt sensitivity. She remembers particularly one moment when a bride asked her if her father could walk her down the aisle in the courtroom. The request was simple, but the silence in the courtroom was profound. The echo of their footsteps on the carpet, the absence of music, and the palpable anticipation in the air. Sally confided to me that the quiet for the bride and groom felt almost mournful. So together, she and I crafted a wedding music playlist to fill this space with joyous melodies. From then on, you could always tell when a marriage was happening in her courtroom. The strains of music signaled celebration, turning the courthouse into a place of warmth and joy. She secretly hopes that other judges will continue this tradition bringing music and joy to their own ceremonies. I have the playlist. One particularly memorable case that defines Sally's career, a serious one, was presiding over the Mass Street murders, which Mary Kay talked about. One of Lawrence's most tragic, complex, and high-profile trials in the city's history. The proceedings were tense and emotionally charged, and with every detail scrutinized and the courtroom buzzing with the weight of justice. With over 200 law enforcement officers involved, hours of videotape from downtown stores, businesses, police vehicles, and most of all, the tragic death of innocents. Watching this packed courtroom case was fascinating and gut-wrenching. Judge Sally kept the decorum, collaborating with the prosecutors, the defense attorneys, the countless witnesses and detectives, all while keeping the jury engaged. The guilty verdict was as dramatic as the trial. Judge Sally faced not only the intricacies of the law, but also the human drama, the fearful, the forgotten, and at times the most hardened and despised individuals. She stood before the accused, her voice steady, guiding proceedings with unwavering integrity. Her compassion shone brightest during emotional adoptions and moments when she stood up for the loneliest child, especially when the others seemed to look away. These stories unfolded quietly, like the hopeful hush before a verdict, or the emotional embrace of a new family formed in a courtroom. Sally's empathy extended beyond the bench. She met with the jurors after each trial, patiently answering their questions and reassuring them that no matter what the verdict, they had done their best with the information they had. The intensity of her role was also felt during frightening courtroom riots, which Mary Kay talked about, that spilled beyond her chambers, even leading to a full courthouse shutdown. The air was thick with tension, the clamor of raised voices, the dull thud of security doors, the worried murmurs and staff and visitors. And with her brilliant security team by her side, Sally found composure amid chaos, balancing authority and calm, ensuring safety and order. The relentless caseload of the 7th District Court demanded resilience, but Sally's patience and humility helped her endure the pressure of decisions that would forever shape people's lives. Reflecting on her journey, Sally saw each experience shaping her approach to judging. Her courtroom has been a place of both justice and joy, a testament to her belief that behind every file is a human being deserving of empathy and understanding. Surviving the COVID courtroom, whether in person or remotely, deserves its own chapter in judicial history. Right? We all remember the greatest on Zoom and YouTube. Mary Kay talked about it. You're on mute, still on mute. We can't hear you. Sir, this is a courtroom. Please stop eating breakfast on camera. Ma'am, please put your clothes on. Sir, please take your hat off. And no, you may not conduct court while driving or walking through the grocery store. Because of COVID, Judge Sally and other judges broadcasted their sessions on YouTube, drawing at times during COVID, thousands of confined and isolated viewers across the United States. As their popularity soared during the COVID pandemic. When in-person courtrooms reopened and COVID court ended on YouTube, many fans mourned the loss like a canceled sitcom for viewers. Suddenly deprived of their favorite weekly episodes of Judge Sally COVID Courtroom, all the judges had a big following, especially Judge Amy Hanley. But in all seriousness, this generation of judges and attorneys didn't just get through a pandemic. They adapted in real time. They redefined what a courtroom could be, built new ways of communication, and kept the wheels of justice turning under extraordinary circumstances. What was born out of necessity has become lasting innovation. Systems and communication tools that will continue to serve the courts for years to come. And somehow, through it all, the court maintained order, dignity, and only occasionally had to remind someone to find that mute button. I'm going to skip over the behavioral health court because Chief Simpson said it so well, and so did Mary Kay. But I'm going to tell you that if you ask Sally what she was most proud of, she would never start with herself. She would start with her team. She would talk about the court's security officers, those steady, watchful presences at the front of the courthouse and inside the courtroom, who kept everyone safe. She would proudly name her court reporters, Mary Kay Howe, for 17 years, and Ellen Grant, who moved from her AA to her recent court reporter. Their skill and years of dedication captured every word that mattered. She would smile when talking about the administrative assistants, Becky, Aaron, and Jesse, who kept the wheels turning every day in and out, along with the many substitute court reporters and assistants who stepped in without hesitation. She would never forget her bailiffs, Heidi and Tom, her fellow judges, the Burt Nash team, victim advocates, court support staff, and the talented attorneys and prosecutors who appeared before her. And she deeply, deeply respected the detectives and law enforcement officers who came into her courtroom prepared to testify, who did the arduous work beforehand, who showed up ready, professional, and committed to getting it right. Each of you holds a story, a moment, a memory that became part of her journey. Each of you has a place in her heart. Sally understood something fundamental, that justice is not delivered by one person on the bench, but by an entire community working together with purpose and care. Because to her, this was never a one-person job. Sally knew she couldn't do her work without all of you. You became her family. And beyond the titles and the years, there is something even more lasting, the legacy. The young attorneys and interns who learned by watching, the colleagues who leaned on her judgment, the community that benefited from her sense of justice, those things don't retire. Judge Sally, thank you for the many years of service, your unwavering integrity, and the lasting example you've set for our community. May your next chapter be filled with purpose, but also with more rest, greater freedom, and plenty of time to enjoy the life you have so richly earned. Alongside your sons, Brian and Mike, your brothers, Rob and Whitney, your nieces and nephews, Libby, Ellie, and Asa, your cousins, Paul and Louisa, your second family, Aubrey, Cole, Hazel, and Huck, all your friends and neighbors, and of course me, your partner in crime. Maybe I should read the room. As you can see in this crowded room, just how respected, loved, and admired you are, Sally. Let's all put our hands together and raise our voices to this remarkable person, Judge Sally Pokorny.
Thank you, Patty. That was great. Several things I could comment on, but as an example of some of the things that Patty ended on, I appreciate Sally asking me as her friend to be the person to MC. I was chief judge. I'm no longer chief judge, and I appreciate Chief Judge Simpson letting me operate in this capacity. I'm going to refrain from saying anything more than it's my pleasure to introduce to you a person you all know and you're all here to honor today, Sally Pokorny. Oh. Now. I told you all. I told you all. I just did that to demonstrate how forgiving Sally Pokorny is. Because I have Chief Justice Rosen of the Kansas Supreme Court, so I'm feeling really dumb right now for missing that and calling Sally up. Sally, if you'll take a seat, we have something. Okay, Sally, come back up because we have something for you. Very sorry about that.
Good
Chief
move.
Justice Rosen.
Good move. This, you know,
But it was all a plan.
he was replaced as chief just recently, and maybe is this why?
Maybe why?
Be no. You sit. No, you
Me up here.
can sit right up here.
Oh,
But let me just say, one of the things that I really appreciate about coming to these occasions is not only the warmth and the love I'm feeling right now, but is being and seeing my former colleagues who are here today. I've been departmental justice for the 7th Judicial District for over 20 years. I know all of you very well. Worked with Judge Parrish for 13 years at Shawnee County District Court. It's just wonderful to see you and to be with you here today. So thank you for being here. The other thing I want to mention, I have short remarks, is my role here is to present a certificate of appreciation. But one thing I didn't appreciate was shortly after assuming the role of Chief Justice in January, I get this email and it says retirement, Sally Pokorny. And typically, things and cases I get from your court are always good and affirmed, but my response was reversed.
yeah.
No, it's not going to happen. But so no, I was surprised, but really appreciative of you letting me know. And one of the harder things I had to deal with was thinking about that and missing you from being here in the 7th. But what I want to say is on behalf of my colleagues at the Supreme Court, and I'm not sure how many Court of Appeals judges are here, and everyone at the Judicial Center, I want to reiterate what has already been so eloquently captured today. And that, Sally, is your career reflects integrity, intellect, and heart. She's brought thoughtful judgment, fairness, and a steady commitment to justice in every case that you presided over. Beyond the bench, I've known Judge Pokorny for a long time. I've always appreciated your candor, you know that, your humor, and your genuine character have made you a valued colleague and friend. You leave behind many who respect you for what you have done and who will remember you with great admiration and affection. And you've always been a trusted colleague, one I could count on for reliable, thoughtful advice. You know, I would call you up for that on occasion. And as Departmental Justice, you've always been straightforward and candid on any issue or whatever I've wanted for and sought guidance on. And I will really miss that vital and unique perspective I've come to rely on. And the people of Kansas will miss your wisdom and your courage, and you'll be deeply missed. It's been said that retirement is a time to look back with satisfaction and a time to look ahead with anticipation. And I just wish you the best in your retirement. Now, my big task today is to present a certificate from the Supreme Court honoring you. And we sent it over here because I was uncertain if I could make it. And if you note, it's beautifully wrapped. And Libby, my wife, is here today. She can tell you I didn't wrap this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to present you with this certificate of appreciation. Here's what it said. It's to the Honorable Sally Pokorny, in appreciation for your years of outstanding service to the Kansas judicial system and the people of the state of Kansas on the occasion of your retirement, this 10th day of April 2026. And my signature is affixed, and Stephanie Smith, our judicial administrator. So here it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Give me a hug. That matches my outfit. It's amazing. Oh, well, so I've been thank you, Mary Kay, for the pointing that she knows I'm a crier too. I want to thank all of you for coming. I'm amazed at the turnout and my oldest friends that are here. Kathy Webb, Kathy Webb, we knew each other in forever. Our parents were friends both from Independence. We have tons of stories that have nothing to do with me being a judge, but it's this kind of support that I've had all my life. And I think Kathy in her green exemplifies that I kind of have carried everybody I've ever known with me. So, but that's a good thing. So is Mary Kay. We found that about ourselves. But the bottom line of my entire life is I'm the luckiest woman in the world. I feel like my entire life has been stumbling into things and luckily having them turn out better than anybody could have expected. I was born in Independence, Kansas, which I have my whole Independence, Kansas contingent here with me, a separate one, of two loving and supportive parents. I was surrounded by friends and neighbors who cared about me, and in fact cared about me enough they'd grab me by the collar if they thought I was doing something that was inappropriate for Sally Davis, and reprimand me in public if that's what I needed. There was an excellent school system there, prepared me for college and beyond, and that's all luck. That was luck of my birth. I went on to Washburn. I made lifelong friends there who are still supporting me today, and received top-notch instruction there. At the time, I just took it for granted that every university and college had these amazing, caring professors. And to think I stumbled into the best university that fit me to a T. And then I stumbled into going to law school. I only went to law school to delay my life because I didn't have any aspirations to be a lawyer. I just didn't know what I was going to do. And I'm sitting on my front porch and there's a law school over there. And I thought, well, I could go do that. And in those days, that would have been 1975, good Lord. It was not the big production it is to get into law school now. And it also wasn't a financially detrimental event. But I scrambled around. I managed to take the LSAT and in fact convinced Ann Langland Smith, and her two kids are here for this retirement, to go take the LSAT with me. And so she was just like, well, okay. And then and she became a lawyer. I was lucky that I loved law school. Once I was there, I thought, hey, this is great. And then I stumbled into an internship for a prosecutor. Now, how'd I do that? Because I was bored. I was standing in front of the bulletin board and it was like, I need a house sitter, I need a dog walker. And then there was this announcement that the Justice Bureau was paying law students to go be prosecutors if they could find an office that would take them. And so Paul Oakleaf was the prosecutor, and his mother and my mother were good friends. So I called and said, Paul, if I can figure out how to pay me, will you hire me? And he said, get on down here. So I learned, I tried a jury trial in that summer, after my 2L. Then I ended up going back to Washburn, and there was an ad that the Shawnee County District Attorney's Office needed interns. And I went and applied, and they hired me. And then I had Gene Olander as my boss, who became a lifelong mentor for me. In fact, Ann Smith and I used to say that our mantra was WWGD. And it was, what would Gene do in this situation? And it carried me through many a difficult situation to have him as a mentor. Then I'm in Shawnee County and I get a phone call from Jeff Chubb, who I'd gone to law school with. And he says, hi, I'm the newly elected county attorney and I don't know what's the first thing about prosecution. You want to come down here to your hometown and be a prosecutor? And so I said, oh, okay. And moved then down to Independence with the boy's father at that time. And then anyway, I spent 25 years down there and loved every minute of it. But my two boys, Brian and Mike, who are here on the front row, had gone on to Northeast Kansas to go to university. And on Christmas, they'd show up in the morning and unwrap their presents and have dinner and then leave. And I was just like, you guys, you got to hang around. They said, we don't know anybody here except you, Mom. And, 24 hours is plenty. So I thought, well, if I'm going to be around those boys, I need to make a change and maybe get closer to them. But once again, it was a convergence of unexpected consequences that got me to Lawrence, Kansas. The boys were in Topeka. That was close enough. So I was looking around for maybe what to do. Patty McCormick then relocated to Lawrence, Kansas. And she called and said, I have an apartment that I'm getting as part of my employment for free. And it's got 3 bedrooms and I only use 1. You want to come and live for free in Lawrence, Kansas? And I said, well, I'd have to find a job. And then Debbie Oakleaf, who started Independence, but was a court reporter here for Judge Mike Malone. I was talking to her and she said, if I were you, I'd call David Brown. David Brown's always looking for somebody. And by gosh, there's David. We went out to lunch. Went back to his office. I met Glenda. I met Catherine Hess there. We hit it off. And I think we agreed about 7 minutes after that, I'd come to work for him. And it was just a marvelous time in the old church across from the courthouse. And it was fabulous. So then there was a judicial position open and I thought, oh, okay, but that was non-existent in my life plan at that point to be a district court judge. 2 weeks before everything was due, I said to Patty, I think I'm going to put my name in for that. Patty didn't sleep for 2 weeks because for those of you who don't know about the process to apply for a judicial position, it is a lot of work. And I couldn't have gotten everything done. And I'm a terrible typist and a lot of things needed to be typed. And there's no such thing as a fillable form for that. You had to print off all the forms, to crank them in, the selectric and try and type. Oh, that was terrible. It took forever to do that. Then, what can I say? I got appointed and it has just been the most marvelous, wonderful miracle of my life. And the thing about all the nice comments that everybody has made is at no point in my life did I ever do anything all by myself. All of you here in this courtroom have helped me in some way or another. One thing that a lot of people have talked about that I want to comment on is Dale still here? Dale Flory? Dale, you need to come front and center here. There is no other courthouse that has the professional court security that we have had here in Douglas County from the moment I stepped through those doors until now. And Dale knows what I'm talking about. And several people have commented on it about the very difficult case that involved a riot in the courtroom. Dale asked me, he said, he gave me a heads up before anything happened. He was reading the tea leaves and said, what's your advice? What do you want us to do? And Dale, my memory is, I said, you're the expert. You do whatever you think you need to do to keep everybody in this courtroom safe. And when you see the cage crashing down at the very front of the courthouse, there's trouble. And Dale handled it perfectly. It was just amazing what fabulous job you and your team did to keep us all safe. And Patty was not exaggerating about the number of officers that came to help. had nothing to do with anything I did. It was the professional people surrounding me. And I don't know if Leo Sauter is here, but Leo showed up during that, and I think he appointed himself as my personal bodyguard. So now whenever I see Leo show up, you know, to help at the courthouse, I get panicked because I think, what do they know is going to happen in this courthouse today that I'm not aware of? And then that same trial, Tom Volker was the my bailiff for that trial. Believe it or not, there are instances where the jury goes out to the crime scene. Now, it never happened in all my tenure, now almost 50 years of having a jury go to a crime scene, but we had it. Dale was in charge of that, working with Tom. And Tom, you were a master during that trial as the bailiff. You were gathering up phones, hurting people, not letting him get away from you, not, you know, being a bailiff is like herding cats. There's no doubt about it. And Tom just did a fabulous job with that, as has every bailiff that I have ever worked with. Susan Hadel's here. She had a short stint, but she did a great job. My, you know, dear Heidi Connolly, who's now dead. I know, it's just like, but she's dead. I miss her all the time because she was such, loved what she did and did a wonderful job. And then Rich, that I've only had when the trial's been aborted. We have never gone to a verdict together. So he's laughed about that he thinks he's the kiss of death for me there. Court services and community corrections, you're all outstanding and go to extraordinary lengths to keep your probationers successful and help them complete their terms and have the tools to remain out of the system. And I know you all get frustrated, but you never stop caring. And we have, I think, probably a greater success of people finishing probation than maybe anywhere in the world. And, you know, people often don't think about a judge working with a district court trustee, but Mary Beth Diaz and John Geely, when I was doing the domestic docket, they would bend over backwards, especially with my non-represented litigants who would have no idea how to prepare that child support worksheet, much less the domestic relations affidavit and an agreed order for sharing expenses. They would sit down and help them to get through that. And now we have, fortunately, the self-help program, and we have Casey Forsyth back there who's now running it, and which has also just saved the judges a lot of heartache, but also has kept the files clean with the right, you know, with the right pleadings in the right order. That's all great. Let me talk about court reporters. We can't have court without court reporters and court reporters who take an accurate record. I want to tell any new lawyer, or even not so new, but you haven't done trial work. After a trial, go talk to the court reporter. And the first thing you ask them is, what could I have done better to help you? And they'll be sincere, because they'll have an earful about everything that you did that made their life a lot more difficult. And two, you ask them, what as an attorney could I have done better in presenting my case? Court reporters will tell you if they think you are being serious, and they have seen more trials than many trial attorneys. They will give you good advice, straight advice. I also want to thank IT. I don't know if anybody from IT is here, but I will never go into private practice again because I have become so dependent on the IT in this courthouse that Jesse or Ellen or I will yell, this isn't working. We have IT on speed dial. I have somebody up there immediately taking care of it. I did finally learn that first I should reboot before I call them up. And And then I think everybody else has done a great job of talking about behavioral health court. But once again, I am not behavioral health court. I simply preside over it, but it doesn't work without Sharon Zaire, who's right there, Blair Braciano, Jason Matikowski. I'm so glad to see you, Jason, that he helped train us, all our entire team on how to respond to people, to incentivize good choices versus bad choices. I couldn't have been as good of a judge without that training from Jason and Ms. Severson, Margaret Severson. You were all great and helped write the handbooks and make sure we were complying with the law and complying with best mental health practices. It just goes on forever. And I want to thank Bob Fairchild because for the behavioral health court. You haven't been mentioned in all the things about that, but it wouldn't have happened without you. You know, I know Charles Branson came to you and talked to you about it, but you could have said over my dead body, and we would have had to have killed you in order to start it. But you know, we wouldn't have. But you know, there were a couple other innovative things that we had tried before that didn't happen, but you were all for it and gave free rein. I really don't know how much you were involved in trying to organize it, but it wouldn't have happened without you, and I have always appreciated that. And then I want to thank my Kansas Women Attorneys Association friends. So when you are retiring, you have to call for the giant dumpster, you know, because you're going through stuff and thinking, why did I save that? Why did I keep that? But today I ran across a letter of recommendation for me, and it was signed by the former presidents of the Kansas Women Attorneys Association. Kathy Reeder, you were a signature. Linda Parks, you were a signator. Kathy Webb, you were a signator on there. Laura Ice, you were a signator on there. You know, I wouldn't be here without the Kansas Women Attorneys Association. Linda Parks had this passion that women needed to help women. What an amazing concept. And that if we all banded together and found the best and the brightest, that women could go far in the law in the state of Kansas. And from the time I started law school to where women are now, it's amazing. More to go, other places to get to. But I have credited Linda and also our now retired Chief Justice Marla Lukert for focusing on that issue, and it has worked incredibly. And then I can't say enough about all the people that have worked with me. And I hope that's how you've always felt, is that you haven't worked for me. We have all had to work together. And yes, I swear, Mary Kay has only started calling me Sally in the last 2 years. Although she is like, oh, okay. I mean, when I said that, she was like, oh, okay. Then we'll see you after lunch, Judge. And then, but we have become more than work colleagues. We have all become, everybody I think who's worked for me, except that 1 2-weeker, we'll be lifelong friends. Yeah. Oh, Millie Schrader. Millie, you're here. You signed that letter too to get this position for me. Do you know that? Yeah, you remember that? Okay. I don't know, I can go on and on, but I think it's, and then Sally Shattuck's here. You were not a past president of the Women Attorneys Association. However, Sally was one of the we knew each other in college early on. We were roommates in college. We went to law school a year apart. She is the godmother of Brian. Sally's been in my life, but seems to me all of my life. And we hit a spot in our mid-30s where we looked at each other and said, we've known each other longer than we have not known each other. And we have continued to be the closest of friends. And I appreciate you being here for the retirement. And she was here for my investiture. So it's a full circle. And then once again, Patty McCormick, this retirement party and event would not have happened without Patty's planning, without her effort, even with her bad knee. She's hauling boxes and, and blue balloons. Who would ever thought blue was an appropriate color for me? And so Patty, once again, I think everybody knows how close we are and what it means to me, and that if anything I've ever needed, you will do your best to get that finished. And Brian and Mike, I loved you so much. I dragged you to court, much to the amazement and chagrin of the male attorneys that I was appearing, and the male judges I was appearing in front of, but I think they were all too afraid to say anything to me. And I did have one court reporter who complained that she was sorry she was having trouble taking the record. There was a baby crying. And I can really say I only now understand why she was a little peeved. I mean, she, for all of you who've been mothers, we don't hear them crying anymore. If you heard them crying all the time, you'd lose your mind. You have that filter, and but they got to go to court a lot, and neither one of them have any interest in being attorneys. To my adopted family, there's Huck and Hazel are here, and they have adopted me as their very own Popo. And their parents, Aubrey and Cole, are here to support me. And they have included me in every part of their lives. And you don't know how grateful I am for that, especially because Cole is such a good cook. And there are more. I know I'm forgetting somebody. There are so many people that have done wonderful things for me and have supported me in my journey. But in order to stop myself from crying, I have tried to remember what I will not miss about being a judge. I will not miss being duty judge. I will not miss doing first appearances. And finally, I will not miss the courthouse toilet paper. Thank you all very much for being here. My former colleagues have come out in full force. My present colleagues, you've all been so supportive of me, and I couldn't have gotten this far without all of you. And thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you all again for being here. We are making a record of the proceedings today. Thank you, Donna, for agreeing to take that record. And for the sake of the record, it was two weaker, not tweaker. We got to make sure the record reflects that correctly. I told you what I was told 30 years ago. Smart, straight shooter, cares about people. I think you've seen it all today. If you hadn't seen it sooner, Sally, best to you. Thank you for your service, for your contribution to the bench, for the contributions you've made in so many ways, and best to you in your retirement. We're adjourned. Thank you.